When Damian Lillard was traded to the Milwaukee Bucks, it shook the entire NBA. You now had two top 75 players in NBA history in their primes on the same team, and one of them, Giannis Antetokounmpo, was arguably the best player in the league. You also had an elite 3-and-D big in Brook Lopez, and you had multi-time All-Star Chris Middleton. When looking at this tandem, you have elite shooting on the perimeter, an elite, historically good interior force in Giannis Antetokounmpo, two superstars, two perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidates. However, all of this is just on paper. Things on the court have been very underwhelming, and after a tumultuous last season, ending with injuries and a first-round exit, this year has started even worse. It seems like we're constantly reminded that you cannot stack talent on paper and just think it automatically leads to success. However, as an NBA GM, how can you turn down an opportunity to add a player of high magnitude? Those chances don't just come every day. Now, we've seen stacking talent on paper lead to high highs like the Miami Heat with LeBron James and the Big Three back-to-back championships, or the Steph and Kevin Durant Warriors. Or you can have lows like the 2011 Heat, the 2013 Lakers, and most recently, to some, the LA Clippers. And then you have the deemed super teams, but not really super, like the Brooklyn Nets of the early 2010s and the Oklahoma City Thunder with Carmelo Anthony. This current team in Milwaukee may not even finish above 500 this season. Currently 4-8 with the 19th best offense. Things have just not been gelling on either side of the court, which is weird because last year, one can say they still managed to have a fairly very good, arguably elite offense. With the full offseason where the stars were supposed to have more cohesion and chemistry, and you get a full season of Doc Rivers under your belt, things have just been looking putrid. I would liken the Bucks offense to a lot of the mid and early 2000s offense where just a lot of stagnation, and when you have a superstar in Giannis Antetokounmpo, you want him in movement or attacking smaller defenders. Using him similar to how you used Embiid, which even though during the regular season was kind of fine, still had its flaws in the playoffs versus Boston, it just doesn't have the same lift offensively because of the lost possessions and their games being stylistically different. Giannis and Dame are special talents, so both will still pull up elite numbers in the box score, but neither one is being fully optimized with this style of coaching, and within this infrastructure of an offense, really operate like two separate entities in one rather than one synergetic whole. Having possessions of Bobby Portis isolation plays when you have Giannis and Dame on the court consistently, it's just not good process as an offense. I'm also weary of the Lopez fit because he's a primary screen setter now and constantly have to set screens up high. Just isn't really much his game. I get versus switches, he can duck in and there's a pick and pop element to it. That's fine. And he's also a big body, which for some smaller defenders makes him, hard to navigate around. But you just leave Giannis standing off ball. Lopez doesn't really have much of a dive and roll game, so it just seems like points get left on the board at times. And the biggest thing is how stagnant the offense is overall. It's minimal movement off the ball. Teams really can just load up and play the gaps and rely on their closeouts. It just make things more difficult once the ball is on one side. It's very 2000s like. The Milwaukee Bucks are already strapped with financial moves they can make to improve this team. So when you're in a situation like this, you're really banking on your supporting cast playing up to the level you perceived when you signed them. However, this team, even from last year, has dropped off significantly with supporting offensive production. I mean, overall, whether it's Brook Lopez shooting poorly from three, Bobby Portis having a bad start to the season, Gary Trent having a putrid start to the season, and then you have a young bright spot in Andre Jackson, but when you start him, he's a detriment to the offense. they really don't have much depth, athleticism, and if the shooting doesn't return, and currently it's ranked 17th in three-point accuracy per cleaning the glass, I don't know what you really do with this team. You're kind of screwed in this situation, and the supporting cast has done nothing to help mitigate all these problems that the team already faces. If you want to analyze the Bucks defense, we have to start off talking about the beginning of all of this, the trade. When you trade Jrue Holiday for Damian Lillard, it was a bank on overwhelming offense for a defensive decline, hoping it wouldn't be too much having Brook Lopez and Giannis still in the back line. However, with Lopez and Giannis, you still need some level of point of attack resistance, or you're almost willingly let your team get in rotation after rotation after rotation. Teams are now more equipped than ever at attacking these leaky points and rigid schemes. Gary Trent was a solid signing, but there's been regression on that end, paired with his offense being just so bad so far. Andre Jackson has great upside on that end, and he's good already, but then again, with him on the court, he's a sophomore, and he is a detriment to the offense. Taurean Prince is passable, but not necessarily a needle mover. And in certain matchups, he could just be too short versus some wings, or too small versus others, like a LeBron per se. Giannis, also in the regular season, has regressed, perhaps due to some recent injury history. I think it's more so him just being conservative on that side of the court in the regular season. And yes, he still may be a great defender, but in the regular season, if he's going to be conservative, plus you're not having that overwhelming offense, it's just going to be a massive issue, especially with Lopez just getting older and older and mobility, constantly declining. And this is just the half court I'm talking about. In transition, it's just god awful for this team, and it already starts on the offensive end, not executing at a good rate there. But this team is just slow and unathletic, and I know it sounds crazy with a team with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Andre Jackson being slow and unathletic, but yes, those two are the only elite athletes, and everywhere else you just have below average athletes, and I guess solid for Dame, who's also regressing. But overall, the transition defense has been terrible all year, ranking bottom 5 in the league. And overall, not only do they allow a great amount of points, which I already just touched on, bottom 5 in the league, but they're in the lower half of the league in frequency too. So not only are you not stopping people when they get in transition, you're also allowing a lot of transition opportunities. And that's just a combination for bad defense and just another way and layer of getting attacked. With all that being said, where does that leave us for the Milwaukee Bucks? I mean, currently, even though they're the 12th seed at 4-8, they're still only 3 games out of the 3rd seed. So I wouldn't say their season is done yet, with the Eastern Conference being a bloodbath outside the top 2 seeds. However, the future doesn't look bright. They have lost some close games to Boston and Cleveland, which should give them some hope and promise, as I do think in a series they can give Boston the scare. I don't know if they win, but I just think that's the physicality and matchup thing. However, I don't see much upside or shift in the defense unless Giannis is just going to start going all out on that end. But then again, that puts him at more injury risk, and does that eventually tax his offense? That I don't know. I don't see them being able to make many moves because of the financial strains they already have, and the offense, they do have the pieces, but with Doc Rivers and just this cold shooting stretch that the team on, I don't know if they're going to get the lift they need on offense to counter out their defensive issues. However, I could be wrong, because then again, Giannis is arguably the best player in the world, if not one. He's definitely in the discussion for top 3. So we just have to sit back and watch and see. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think the Bucks' future is, and let me know if you think they should just do a fire sale by the trade deadline and trade Dame, trade Giannis, and just start the rebuild.